Hey, it's Robert Beard, the host of the Commercial Landscaper podcast. These podcasts challenge you to grow as a leader, to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone, and to 10x your company. I really encourage you to enjoy the show, share it with teammates, fellow business owners, and subscribe. That helps us grow our community. Hi, this is Robert Beard with the Commercial Landscaper podcast. Really excited today to be joined by JT Price. JT, welcome to the show today.
Robert, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, I know you're a busy person. We talked a couple of weeks ago. It was great. I'd seen you at a lot of events, and so it was nice actually to spend a bit of time to get to know you and about your family. So great that you can join us today. I'd love for we have an amazing audience all around the world actually. I'd love them to get to know a little bit about you and your background and a little bit about you in the industry.
Great, thanks, Robert. So I grew up in Rock Hill, South Carolina, not too terribly far from where you live now, in spite of your Scottish accent, and went to college, went to law school. I'm actually a recovering lawyer, and then in the process of law school, said, well, I don't think I really want to do this. And I did work for a federal judge for a year, which was a fantastic experience.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But then went to the consulting firm McKinsey Company, spent about 4 years there, moved to Alabama actually to work with one of my former McKinsey colleagues, turning around a manufacturing company, a bus manufacturing company of all things. Wow. Then spent, and that's important because that person, Joe Sokoloff, who I moved to Alabama to work with, comes back into this story later, and then joined a private equity firm in New York, but stayed in Birmingham because I was traveling around the country working on, in general, whatever the most broken thing in the portfolio was. And that's how I first came into the industry. One of their holdings is, to this day, Finn Corporation, which makes hydro seeders, straw blowers, bark blowers. So I spent a year as the interim head of that business, 5 years on the board, and was home in Birmingham one weekend, met a girl, eventually married the girl. Aaron and I have a 13-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son, but had to get off the road. It's just, you travel a lot. It's hard to be gone 150 nights a year, and joined a family office here in Birmingham, a wealthy family. One of their holdings was Landscape Workshop. The business was struggling. So in late 2013, early 2014, I raised my hand and said, hey, I'm going to go be CEO of Landscape Workshop for a year. And that was, if I'm doing the math right, about 12 years ago. So it's funny how the 1 year turns into 12 years in a hurry. My business partner now, our chief operating officer, Joe Sokoloff, this is now the fourth time Joe and I have worked together. Joe runs the business with me.
Awesome. I've got a bunch of questions that pop up in my head there, but the relationship with you and Joe, what does that look like in terms of, everybody, partnerships, whether even marriages have their strengths and weaknesses. What do you feel about that relationship with Joe?
Oh, a great question. So, and this is literally the fourth time Joe and I have worked together. We started at McKinsey in Charlotte, North Carolina, the same day in 1999. His only daughter is my goddaughter, but we don't work together because we're friends. We work together because I think he's excellent. Had a big career in consulting, didn't need to do this. But in 2020, when we took on our first real private equity investor, it created an equity pool that I was able to use as a weapon to add some really talented people and take care of some people who are already on the team. But Joe's got a lot of strengths. He's very smart. He's very thoughtful, but he's also very patient, and he's willing to grind on the details of how do we make our systems and processes a little better every day. And frankly, I'm pretty impatient with that. And I tend to go pretty quickly to this isn't the right person. We need to make a change. Joe has much more of a, hold on, we can get this person there. Don't get me wrong, we're not going to accept low performance, but we can get this person there. And I think it works. And the flip side, of course, is Joe has zero interest in investor relations or going and giving a talk like this. And so over time, until Joe joined in 2020, I was very much both inside and outside. At this point, Joe's really Mr. Inside, and to a large extent, I'm Mr. Outside. So I'm spending my time investor relations, talent acquisition, mergers and acquisitions, and still very much talent and culture, but not, I'm still engaged in the business, but not the way I was before Joe.
Right,
is
right.
involved. Joe really owns the piece of the business that is, we've got 2,000 guys going out to serve 5 or 6,000 properties this week. Did everybody go where they were supposed to do and
Right.
do what they were supposed to do? And did we make our business a tiny bit better this week, this month, this year, in terms of our systems and our processes, in terms of both the customer relationships and actually executing the landscaping. So it's a great partnership. And I think one of the things that makes it great is I think what he does is harder and more valuable than what I do. And he foolishly thinks what I do is harder and more valuable than what he is. And, whether it's a marriage or a work partnership, when you think the other person has it harder than you do and is carrying more of the water, when both people think that, that tends to be a good sign.
That's true. Yeah. No, I'm actually asked quite a few times on what makes a successful partnership. And, I always encourage people to not dive into partnerships, do that almost at that dating game first to see if you can work together. And maybe at some point there's some type of equity discussion, but it's always good to have that discussion first just to see if you work. And that detail you're talking about, that's essentially, that's super essential with the business. So nice job. You touched on roughly what size you are in right now, but talk me through the journey since you first started working with Landscape Workcraft to where you are today.
So when I became CEO of Landscape Workshop, we were doing about 18 million in revenue, and I somewhat jokingly but very seriously at the time, we were a landscape nonprofit. We made no money. We had a little bit of EBITDA, but EBITDA is a little fictional sometimes in the sense that certainly if you took our EBITDA minus our capex, we were at best breaking even. A big part of the journey was we deserve to make money. We do a good job. We need to charge prices and be efficient in a way that creates an EBITDA margin that causes us to have an economic reason to exist. And I'm sure we'll talk about that some more. So that was at the beginning of 2014 when we did our first transaction with Carousel Capital in 2020. We were doing about 45 in revenue and about 8 in EBITDA. And we're currently in the high 30s in EBITDA and, the bottom half of the 200s in revenue. And of course, as I think most of the larger players in the industry know, Carousel Capital sold their controlling position in Landscape Workshop to Ares, which is a big global multi-strategy alternative asset manager on May 16th. So
Oh, wow.
we've had a busy year on that front.
Wow, that's great news. I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but that's tremendous news. And that's a huge amount of EBITDA number and revenue number. So a lot to put your hands around.
Oh, it's funny. And you and I have talked about this. I think a lot of people, when they talk publicly about their companies, pretend everything is perfect. Absolutely not. We're somebody wearing this shirt is doing something I wish they were not doing right now. And our job as leaders is to acknowledge that and to try to fix the behavior and make the behavior be what you want it to be. Every day we're fighting the battle. And I think a lot of people say, oh, if I only get to this size, it'll all be easy. It's never easy. This is a grinded out industry, and not today, but the day may come when I'm tired of the grind. If and when I'm tired of the grind, I need to hand this seat over to somebody else, because if you're not willing to fight the battle every day, you're not going to win in this industry.
I think one of the things you talked about when we spoke earlier was you do things maybe slightly different from other buyers, where you're going in and you're making some immediate changes. You're pretty much upfront with sellers. Hey, this is what we're going to do in this first 30, 60, 90 days. And I think you said you almost have a team dedicated to make that transition, correct?
So we have 11 members of our post-merger integration team, and that is their only job. It's funny, when we built that team, we had this vision, they'll also do internal training and help us be better. And we're actually about to build a new team to do that, because it turns out that we keep the post-merger integration team completely busy just doing integrations. And that team, we call them the directors of operations. They've all run a branch here or somewhere else. They're pretty senior. It's a very expensive team. We spend a lot of money on this team. It has a couple of advantages. One is it frankly allows us to buy businesses that maybe other people shouldn't or can't. We're buying a business where the seller wants to retire immediately. And while that's not my favorite situation, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get sick. Sometimes you have a health event, and because we have this team, I can send two people who I know how to run a business down there immediately, and they can run the business immediately until we figure out, okay, who on this team can run this business, or if not, let's transfer somebody in to run the business. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility. The other piece of that team is I'm pretty dogmatic. We're going to have one culture, one brand, one way we do things. And that doesn't mean that our local owners and local managers don't have room for entrepreneurship. We're going to use the same systems. We're going to have the same processes. We're going to have the same values. We're going to have the same brand. Broadly, we're going to do things the same way in every branch. Now, one of our branches does Taco Tuesday for the team. One of our branches, I think this is a little crazy, but it works for them, hands out lollipops.
Right.
There's what you do to make your branch a family is up to you as a general manager, but we've got to be able to deliver a consistent product in a consistent way, because a lot of our customers work with us in multiple places. And, I'm very upfront with folks who are thinking about selling their business to us. I'm like, hey, we are a great buyer in a lot of ways. We're going to pay a market rate. We know what we're doing, so we're going to close in a hurry. We're going to be a great home for your people, but we are going to rebrand you. Going forward, we're going to e-verify. And if either of those things are a problem for you, we're not the right partner for you. And I'd rather have that conversation up front and be efficient with people's time rather than pop that on them as the last conversation, not the first.
That's so true, because actually this morning and yesterday, I've had two conversations with people who recently sold, within the last year or two. And it was totally the opposite. They were always like, spun this story, hey, we're not going to change things. You're going to be really involved. It's going to be a seamless transition. And, one person said to me that they didn't even see the buyer CEO for 4 months. And they're still dealing with notices from the state where their trucks are being pulled over because the trucks' titles haven't been changed. So, I've heard a bunch of stories where, they're sold a great package, but, quickly within 6 months or a year, things are totally opposite from what they were sold. So the fact that you're up front with them, I think I appreciate.
There are plenty of folks in our industry doing it the right way, but a big part of our mergers and acquisitions success is, I think we bought over 40 companies. 4 of those acquisitions, the seller doesn't like me. They would probably argue that we did something wrong. I would probably argue, well, if it's 4 out of 40, maybe it's you, not me. That means 36 out of 40 are out there saying Landscape Workshop did what they said they were going to do. And so, part of my motivation for behaving the way I do is that it's just a nice way to live life. You get to tell the truth all the time. But part of my motivation is our biggest advocate is a happy seller. And at this point, I think well over half of our transactions are referrals from somebody sold their business to us. They're happy. They tell their friends, and then their friend sells their business to us.
Right.
And in a world where if you have a good landscape business, people are lined up around the corner to buy it. But in a world where your friend tells you, hey, these guys were efficient, they did what they said they were going to do. I'm pretty happy with the way they run my company because this is somebody's baby that we've acquired. That goes a long way.
Oh, for sure. Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors. Urcher is a life brand born from grit, founded by Zach Strausser. The mission is clear: to raise $1 million for the trades by supporting vocational training across North America. Urcher makes tough, smart gear built for landscaping and snow professionals who work hard outside every day in all conditions. Their apparel puts safety first, helps crews look sharp, and honors the pride in their craft. Every purchase has purpose, fueling training programs and building a resilient workforce. Urcher isn't just workwear, it's a culture of respect, resilience, and results. When you contact Urcher, mention Wilson 360 and Zach and his team will take well care of you. You talked about, very early on, bringing in your own processes and systems, which I think is outstanding. But as you know, one of the biggest challenges is the merging of cultures. How do you overcome, or how do you deal with that type of scenario? Because a lot of the time you get a decent sense when you talk to the owner or you walk through a company of a potential seller, but it's not until you peel back the layers you find out truly what that culture is like.
We usually don't really know what the culture is like the day of closing. A lot of times the only person at the company we've talked to is the owner. And I tell a story, and this is actually somebody who's been part of our business for 4 years now. And I have a great relationship and he's still part of our team. But all through the process, he talked about, I have these amazing account managers. This is a plug and play opportunity. And the day after closing, like, well, listen, 3 of my 4 account managers are terrible and you need to find replacements. And you know, I'm an adult. Nobody's going to tell me what's wrong with their company when they're trying to, you know, and there's a lot of stuff we can diligence, but in most cases, we don't get to talk to the team and form an independent opinion. And so, you know, we spent some time grinding it out, getting the right people on the train. But, you know, I laugh because I see these panels at these events and, you know, I hear some of my competitors, oh, we only buy a company with the perfect culture. I'm like, I mean, I think I run one of the best commercial landscape businesses in the country and we don't have a perfect culture. So where are these magical businesses you are buying? Congratulations to you. And basically the way we deal with that issue is we're really upfront with the owner. It's going to be our culture. It's going to be our systems. And then the post-merger integration team. And in a lot of ways, that's the most interesting job at Landscape Workshop because every 3, 6, 8 months, you're doing something new, but it's hard from a lifestyle perspective because you've got to be there in person to drive impact. We are very upfront that we have a very specific culture. We hope it's for you. We think it's the best place in our industry for a high performer to work. But if it's not for you, it's not for you. And so we're very upfront. We're gonna have our culture, which is very performance driven, very metric driven, not very political. You can't be a jerk, but at the end of the day, you don't need to be my friend to be very successful here. You know, my dogs are always happy to see me when I get home. I don't need affirmation from my employees. So we have a very explicit and specific culture. And when we do an acquisition, you're nice about it. You let people walk the path to some extent at their own rate, but at the end of the day, if they don't buy into what we're doing, they can't stay. And in most cases, if they do buy into what we're doing, they're going to have more opportunity and make more money than they did at the relatively small company that we acquired.
You know, when you had your previous experience with working with these consulting firms, you know, that and you know, other industries, it must give you a good sense that when you start initially looking at a company, you could probably quickly tell within a short period of time if this is a good opportunity. What are some of those, I suppose, triggers or red flags that you quickly identify?
Yeah, I don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce because a lot of my lessons have been learned the hard way by doing the wrong deals. But, you know, to share a little bit with your audience, for us, it's got to be the right book of commercial maintenance business. And every now and then we'll dig in on a company and we'll ultimately pass because their work's all priced wrong. And I can't fix that. I don't want to buy a company and show up the next day and say, hey, you're running a 30% gross margin. You need to be running a 45% gross margin. Therefore, I'm sending price increases out. Like that's not good for anybody. And unfortunately, I mean, there's some wonderful human beings in our industry who have just priced all their work in an unsustainable way. I'm sure as a consultant, you spend a lot of time like, hey, this is not a volume industry. Every property needs to have a financial reason to exist as part of your portfolio of customers. And that doesn't mean you're ripping people off. You're making a fair profit. If you make too much profit, the market will beat you down. But if you don't make enough profit, you can't invest in your team and your systems and all the things that customers like. A fairly priced book of commercial maintenance. And second, people who can own the relationships and execute the work. Those are the 2 starting points. And then there are a whole bunch of things underneath that. You know, like I'll give one example that you learned the hard way. We bought a couple of companies where the owner had either directly or indirectly made promises to some of their employees, oh, you'll get a chance to buy the business. And it turns out that they don't have any money. And then the owner's like, well, it turns out I want money, which I respect. I mean, that's your retirement plan, is selling your business. And the problem, though, is if you've promised people that they're going to get the business and then you sell it to us, there's just a huge amount of ill will and anger. And so that's now something I check for. I'm like, hey, if you promise these guys or gals they're going to get to buy the business, I'm not going to be the one who breaks their hearts. You know, that I'm going to let somebody else do that. So at a high level, it's, you know, do you do what we do? commercial maintenance? Do you have people who can execute the work? It's the people in the customer base is all the value. And then there's a lot of nuance underneath and things we've learned the hard way in terms of the checklist. But one of the advantages of, we were probably one of the first 10 private equity backed commercial landscape companies. Now they're well over 100. One of the advantages of having done so many transactions is we've made every mistake. I mean, I'm sure I'll find some new mistake to make, but we've made every mistake once or twice, and it makes us much more efficient on the front end and in our diligence, because I don't want to waste people's time. I want to be and I don't want to waste my team's time. I want to be very efficient. If somebody's primarily a single family residential company, that's not for us. And we know that. If somebody's primarily a tree company, that's not for us. And we know that. I'm not saying never on the tree thing, but I've got enough problems without, really getting into the tree business right now.
One of the things we touched on before was building the bench. Inevitably, a seller will, whether it be 6 months, 3 years, they will eventually leave your company. And it's always good to just sort of bring up talent through the company. They're drinking the Kool-Aid. They know how the systems work. What are some of the techniques that you continue to build that bench and even make them into eventual A players that will take some of the weight off your shoulders as you continue to grow?
I mean, this is a constant battle, and a lot of the people I respect in the industry would say the same thing. Management, I think labor is obviously a continuing challenge, but for me, it's more, can we have excellent managers? And that is a challenge. If you think about what we ask an account manager or a general manager or a regional vice president to do, we want them to be good with customers. We want them to lead their crew in an appropriate way. As they move up the food chain, they need to have some financial understanding. These are hard jobs, and we ask a lot of folks. In my perfect world, and I want to be clear, I don't live in my perfect world, but in my perfect world, somebody would be I'm talking about our management. Somebody would be an intern with us, maybe before their junior or senior year in college. We would hire them out of college as what we call an associate account manager or associate project manager. They'd spend at least one growing season running a crew and also getting some training on the side. And then we promote them to account manager when they're ready. And then if they're awesome as an account manager, we promote them to general manager when they're ready. And if they're awesome as a general manager, we promote them to regional vice president when they're ready. And at that point, they're running a $20 or $30 million business within our company.
Right.
We don't always, that's a very long lead time development. And at the rate we're growing, we're a lot of times either getting people in an acquisition, and if they buy into our culture, I don't care if they grew up at some other company or grew up here. All I care about is their excellence. But, we do have to hire laterally a lot, and we have an in-house talent acquisition team, and it's a challenge. I won't pretend, for salespeople, we probably bat 300 or 400. That is 30 or 40% of the folks we hire to do outside sales really succeed in the long term here. Account managers, maybe 65 or 70%, and that's a lot better, but it's not 100%. And so obviously we'd rather home grow folks so they've grown up in our culture. We know they're good already before we put them in front of a customer, but you don't always have that luxury. So, and a lot of our systems are about giving us transparency into when somebody's, for lack of a better word, failing in their customer service, their leadership of their crews, whatever. So we can either coach them up or coach them out of our organization.
Yeah, it sounds like earlier, you've not only built your transition team that were supposed to do some of the training, but now you're building a team to specifically work in the training part. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, most of our training is people doing it in their free time, and nobody has any free time. And there's always going to be, the best way to learn something is to do it with a mentor standing next to you, showing you how to do it, giving you constructive feedback. But that said, we're going to have leaders in our organization who are great at developing people, and we're going to have leaders in our organization who are maybe less great at developing people. And I need that to be a little more systematic. I need to know that if somebody joins us as an associate account manager or associate project manager, that they're going to know certain things at the end of year one. And if they have the hunger, they're ready to step into the next job, and they know what that looks like, and they've proven to our satisfaction that they have the skills and the hunger to be excellent. And you know, that's an evolution as we've grown. When we were a much smaller company, I knew every account manager personally. I'd probably ridden with them at least once in the last year. I had a personal opinion about everybody. And one of the things that's hard for me as we scale is knowing that I can't know on a personal level in a real way 150 account managers. I have to rely on the systems to tell me who's excellent and ready for the next job.
Sense. Yeah, that's a tough transition as you scale your company. I know we're just about to wrap things up here, but packaging all your industry, your business experience, what would be, the top one or two pieces of advice for maybe new business owners within the last, 2 or 3 years that are just, they're start cutting lawns, now they're beginning to get some traction, now they're beginning to learn and digest all that information. What would be your biggest advice to them?
Listen, being an entrepreneur is hard. And if you're going to start a business, you've got to be willing to suffer. And the suffering never stops, but it comes with its rewards of success and excellence. I think my 3 thoughts are: 1, don't be an entrepreneur unless you're willing to suffer and struggle. It's hard. 2, as soon as you can, understand your financials. There is nothing, there are sadder things in life, but it is pretty sad. I talk to a few companies every year who provide a great product to their customers, but have built no value for themselves and their family because they don't make any money. And so you need to pretty quickly understand pricing work, the amount, what you need to do to make money and create something of real value. And then I think the third piece is, as you grow, you can't do it alone. We're going to win or lose with the quality of our people and the culture we've built. I do my best to build a team here where I have the best people I can possibly get. If I pay them a little more, that's awesome. So be it. But they have to be excellent. Just because you pay somebody a lot doesn't mean they're excellent. But if you find somebody excellent, you need to keep that person and develop them and invest in them, because you can't build anything of substance alone.
I'll sometimes use a term, I want to be the dumbest person in the room. So if you're having to pay more or even bring in, to your point about the financial piece, that was something my partner and I we struggled at, but, we brought in outside help, a consultant, they were helping us back in 2006 to 8. And we quickly learned we were not making money on landscape construction. And luckily we just got out before that 2008 to 11 crash.
Oh. Yeah.
So, I think, sometimes you think you know everything, but just, to remove that ego, bring some outside help with, even if it's for specific, task or project, I think it's so valuable.
Yeah. I know that I'm not just saying this because I'm on a consultant's podcast, but even at our scale, we'll occasionally bring in consultants for things we don't understand, because it's pretty inefficient to learn from first principles something that somebody else has figured out. And if I have a problem and my team and I don't know the answer, but somebody else in the universe knows the answer, I would much rather pay them to tell us the answer than suffer through all of the mistakes. What I would like to do mostly is copy the best thing that somebody else has figured out. The odds that I figure it out for myself are pretty low.
Yes. No, you're right. I think if somebody else has already learned it and you just pay for that experience they bring to the table, then it's so valuable. JT, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. If somebody interested in landscape workshop or getting hold of you, what's the best way for somebody to sort of reach out to your organization?
Yeah, so our web address, www.landscapeworkshop.com. My personal email address. I make no promises you'll hear back from me in a timely way, but jtprice@landscapeworkshop.com. The one thing you will hear back from me in a hurry is if you're interested in joining our team or you're interested in selling your company to us, shoot me that email and I'll forward it to the right people in our talent acquisition. There's our M&A team and you'll get a quick response. But really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience. And as a guy from South Carolina, I'm not used to having the second best accent in a 2-person conversation, but you're definitely winning the accent war, my friend.
Well, thank you. And I keep getting a hard time from all my friends back in the UK saying I'm losing my accent. So that's why I go back at least once or twice a year just to top it up a little bit. But JT, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, telling me about your company. So really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Robert. Take care.
Right. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Commercial Landscaper podcast. I hope you're walking away with some great nuggets that you can immediately apply to your business, whether you're in leadership, operations, or you just want to show up every day with that Ironman mindset. Remember, growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens with intentional moves, bold conversations, and surround yourself with the right people. If you found value today, subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with others. And again, don't forget to check out wilson-360.com. We have digital courses from account management, operational excellence, leadership development, or some of the other coaching packages we offer. Anyway, huge shout out to our sponsors. Thank you very much. And I'll leave with this. Have a pure, dead, brilliant day.